Alright, you ready? Alright, we'll scoot on over to James then. That was quite fun, that. Amortization, a bit of a difficult one to say that. So today we're going to be meeting with some of the staff, and I just wanted to explain before we get into the video that really at the firm as a general, with all the businesses, we really try to instill our core values, and those core values range depending on what type of business that we're talking about, and the ones that you're going to view today are from Charles Cox. So we have some various core values which are basically giving staff empathy, making sure that they understand their customers' needs and problems, but finding a solution and encouraging them. And I think it's really important that you try to not only have your core values like as a kind of document that's hidden away and maybe given to you on the first day of training, should be up on the wall. People should be reminded of it constantly. I know some staff here, they have the core values as their screensaver in the background. We'd also run like an award system as well, so it encourages people to follow that. Hopefully today you'll be able to see the two types of sort of meeting that we run at Charles Cox, and that will depend on the type of staff. So we'll do a little recap at the end, but before we get going, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below. Please let me know if you have meetings with your team, whether or not you struggle with that sort of thing. So yeah, we'll get straight into the video now. Yeah, so we've just come back over to the Knoll Business Centre, and we're going to have a meeting with Chris shortly. So Chris is one of our kind of, I'd say like new members rising through the ranks or whatever, and he's joined us from another firm, and he's hoping to get his IRPM qualification, so Institute of Residential Property Management. That will allow him to springboard himself up with his career, basically. So there are a couple of levels of that, and with Chris, obviously, it's about nurturing those people and making sure they grow up and they get the kind of Charles Cox ethos and the core values that we have at the firm. And I do this on a regular basis. There's a couple of member staff like Chris that we try and spend a bit of time with, and I really do enjoy like imparting the knowledge onto him, and I think it's key that as we grow as a business that we have people like him as well as people that are already qualified and have come from other businesses, and it makes us a very well-rounded business and allows us to, you know, be a bunch of collective minds to kind of solve problems and things like that, and everyone's experiences are different.
Right.
Alright, so what have you got for us this week then, Chris?
What haven't I got for you this week?
You know, with Section 20, so there are two parts of Section 20. You've got your £250 limit, or when one of the flats hits there. There's also a second part of Section 20, which is if you enter into a long-term contract, which is more than 12 months. Yeah. If it costs anybody at the building more than £100 towards that long-term contract, then you need to do Section 20.
Say that again. So, I see.
Does that make sense?
250 threshold.
It's 250 threshold for what they call qualifying works, which is repairs, maintenance, painting, decorating, all that sort of stuff. The lift blows up and it's expensive, not covered by a contract. They're all qualifying works. What isn't qualifying works is like surveyors' fees, accountancy fees, managing agent fees, like professional fees are not qualifying works. So you don't have to do Section 20 on them. But then you have to do another set of Section 20 if you're going to enter into like a 10-year contract, where the whole 10-year contract's going to cost a fair amount of money.
And that's
so
£100.
It's £100 a year for those people. So
per unit.
Yeah. This is basically a classic example of like there's obviously some extra money to pay on this particular building, or they've got halfway through a project and they need a top up, or it's a big major project, it's not something we've budgeted for or whatever. Often that will, when they're fair amounts of money, and that fair amount of money is defined by the person, not really the building, because £1,000 to one person might be a lot of money compared to 10 grand to someone else might be not a lot of money. you're always going to get somebody be like, oh, I can't physically muster up that money. Just because they maybe they've maxed out all their other resources, maybe they've got credit card debts out, whatever. And second you take loans out, it then affects your credit history normally, which then prevents you getting more ones. So there's like a vicious cycle to it. So that's like the psychology behind it. But you often get people will come and, you know, they'll say, oh, we haven't got the money or whatever, and they'll want to have a meeting. But in my experience, other than them telling you about their situation, you're not really going to achieve a lot in that meeting. You'll end up at the end of that meeting, often they'll leave, you'll leave, and nothing has actually been resolved. The reality is they are better, because this is a freehold company, a freeholder that owns this. They're better off putting in writing their situation, like, we could afford X, Y, Z, we could afford to pay monthly, or we could afford this, because you have to remember, ultimately, the freeholder is responsible for repairing and maintaining the building. It's a long journey. The best thing to do is almost for them to figure out if there is a way of them paying for it. If they say, like, right, my bill's 10 grand and I can pay a third over the next few months, and they're willing to enter into agreement like that, then the freeholder might say, well, I'll loan the money for the minute to forward fund it and cash flow it, and they'll pay it back.
So if they send the letter to me and I forward on to the freeholder, okay, because I feel like inviting them in gives them false hope, like I'm going to be able to come up with a solution.
You won't be able to come up with a solution.
That's what I mean.
And you'll leave that meeting with nobody really deciding anything, I suspect. You know, even if they come in and say, what we propose is X, Y, Z, you're still going to have to put that to the freeholder anyway. And it shouldn't really come from you in your own words. It really should be them emailing in. So in the first instance, I would go back and just ask them to kind of email their situation in. Obviously you can be genuinely sympathetic about them. Maybe you want to give them a phone call and just say, look, I'm not saying I don't want to have a meeting with you, I just want to do the most productive thing here. And the most productive thing is if you think about your situation and how it might become resolved, put that in writing. I can put that to the freeholder and they can make the decision. Sometimes the calls are easier than emails. Big fan of that, because sometimes it stops like a string of 20 emails over one phone call.
Fine, okay, that's
human voice and the way you portray things is a lot easier when you're talking than it is when you're writing text.
Okay, that's cool.
So the meeting with Chris, I think, was quite useful on several levels, because he had some very technical questions to ask, and then we kind of expanded upon those. So you'll see the bit about the Section 20, and then the Section 20 for long-term contracts. They're two bits of legislation, very similar, but a lot of people get caught out on those, and that wasn't really his primary question, but it's a good example of building on his education. One of the things that we did touch on was the person that has to contribute some money towards these works, and that there is an emotional journey for them because they perhaps don't have the finances to do that. And that's where the property manager himself or herself will have a different type of skill set, because some people deal with those situations very differently. You've got to be sympathetic to the people but also remain in a business-like manner. You have to remember there are 6, 7, 8, 9 whatever people in the building, so this one person's situation can't impact everybody else. You could have water pouring through the ceiling on the top floor, but the person on the first floor can't pay the bill. The person at the top's not really going to care about that personally. They'll probably end up arguing in the lift on the way down to the ground floor about it if it gets out. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation, and unfortunately it's kind of what we get drawn into. It's not really something you can teach people. It's very much a person-centred skill. But hopefully most people understand, and it's one of our core values is being empathetic and understanding that we are also leaseholders and freeholders and the rest of it, and we've been in those shoes and the rest of it, or I have, or some of the staff have, so we can share those emotional journeys with people and then impart that knowledge onto staff like Chris, so that he can say it's kind of pointless having the meeting because you're not going to achieve a lot out of it. all it's going to be is an emotional experience, and that's no good for Chris or the client, because it puts Chris in a difficult position. It also puts them in a position where they might think they're going to get a bit of hope, but in reality, in my experience, it's then back to the system of going to the freeholder and maybe sounding them out with their kind of issue and seeing if they can resolve it that way. Right, we're over here at our Willingdon office. We're just going to have a meeting with a senior team with James, who runs our lettings department. He's been on holiday, been sunning himself in sunny Spain, Torremolinos, I believe. So he's probably been going around on a scooter, Benidorm style, drinking beer and all that jazz. But I think the point of this is it's really important to have a good catch up with your team, especially when they've been away for a little bit, and just see where things are. That will really help your business and help them get back running, hit the ground running when they get back. And then also stuff like there might be some emails that are sitting in there that I can help with and assist with. So I think it's a really good process to go through. So we're going to scoot on over to James and have a little meeting with him. So over to James then. That was quite fun, that. Getting through your emails.
Getting there, yeah. 300 odd.
300. Oh.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
I was doing emails while I was away. As you were aware.
I saw a few. Yeah.
So I wasn't all fun in the sun.
Good stuff.
What I've said to the tenant is, this is information that's come back. I've been away, and I've liaised back with you, you for your instructions, and in the meantime I've emailed Block, and I've also asked them for a timeline of their communication with above leaseholder, because it's all right them saying we wash our hands of it, but they are potentially fundamentally a big cause of the issue, why it's taken so long as well. So if they can at least give us some indication that they've spoken to the leaseholder above multiple times well before this, then it just puts a bit of strength in our how we go back. But
cool.
All looks fine.
And I like to see you finally using your whiteboard.
Yeah. One day, Matt, it's going to get wrapped up and given to you as a birthday present.
Has he told you about the whiteboard?
So you weren't keen on it, or?
I wasn't keen on it because I like everything to be digital, but I caved because he was new and I didn't want to upset him and stuff. And I was like, all right, you can have a whiteboard, whatever. So he orders it. He says, I want a whiteboard, and it's supposed to be like this big, like that.
Like, for a small one.
It was supposed to. I said it could go up there inside the because then it was not being seen, and it. I don't know. Both of us checked the size, to be fair, but it came and it arrived, and I was like, "That is not like whatever, like A1 or whatever. This is like humongous." It's okay. It in a way, like, although I don't moan about it, but it just demonstrates how everybody does things differently, don't they? And like. The touchy-feely thing, isn't it, of having a pen and a whiteboard and that, and being able to wipe it off and the rest of it. To me, I'm like, I understand that, but I just find it easier to have it on a spreadsheet, because I'm like on the go all the time. I'm like, I'd never have that with. I mean, if I had to carry that with me, I'd get blown away with that like a sail.
Matt walking around with a whiteboard strapped to his back.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool.
Super.
So hopefully that was really insightful, and what I want to do is the difference between the style of meeting with the first member of staff, Chris, and then with James. So Chris is a fairly new member of staff to us, and he's on his journey through kind of getting his qualifications and the rest of it. So what we wanted to do is really work with Chris, and you can see that I've kind of given him some of those core value tasks where, he's got this issue with a particular resident, and then we need to get it resolved, but we need to be empathetic empathetic, but also we do have a job to do, and obviously we've got to be empathetic to the other people involved. So it can be a really fine line to balance, but that is part of Chris's journey through that, and making sure that he understands and believes in the core values of the firm. And then obviously the meeting with James, maybe a little bit more jovial. James is senior, and I kind of know what I'm going to get out of James. He's responsible for his own workload, but it's always key just to make sure you're touching base with your members of staff. Sometimes they need to just know what I'm doing. You know, I might not see them for 2 or 3 weeks, and you know, there's this guy at the top or whatever, or I haven't seen Matt for ages. So sometimes it's about that. Other times it's just making sure that we're on track, and they all need some level of instruction or whatever, but it's very much a light touch instruction for James. So you can see those 2 different styles, but all the time making sure that there's the core values are there, and that James is kind of believing in them, sticking to them, and also filtering those down to his style as well, much in the same way that you saw me with Chris. That would be something that James would be doing with his staff, so we try and install that across the firm. So hopefully there are some really good tips and bits of advice for you, and some nice footage there of stuff that we do here. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on the videos.